Hi, friends. Good morning. Welcome back. We're doing this again. It's been a minute, so I'm kind of slowly gathering my bearings and remembering all that muscle memory is slowly coming back. But happy Monday for anyone who's new here. I'm Libby, and welcome to my audio journal, Finding Joy in the Shadows. Each week, I show up here to talk through the curveballs life loves to throw our way. And I help us look for joy that still manages to sneak its way in, even when we're in the midst of our messiest moments. This space is part reflection, part resistance, and part love letter to anyone who's struggling and still showing up. I am working through my own stuff in real time. And if something I share helps you feel less alone or more grounded, then that's good. That means that we're doing this work together. So like I said, it's been a minute. And I thought before we dive into today's topic, which is all about my personal story of how I found my way to spirituality, I thought let's first spend a few minutes catching up. How's everyone doing out there? Everyone staying sane? I know for me, the last few months have really tested me. And honestly, I wasn't even sure I would even record another episode after my last episode aired in early February. It's been crazy for me over here between my day job and doing my own emotional heavy lifting to protect my own joy right now. I wasn't sure I had the capacity to keep showing up here and sharing my story with others. But there's always a but. But after chatting with some very close and dear friends, I realized that maybe that's exactly why this space matters. Maybe the tips, the tools, and the tender moments I have collected throughout my life are exactly what is needed now more than ever. So here we are. I found a few more things to talk about. So if you're ready, I'm ready. All right. Now, normally this is where I take us on a little detour for some good old Libby's problems. Because Lord knows I have a growing list of things to talk about. But for time, I'm going to keep things a bit light today. Now, if you're new here, Libby's Problems, or LPs, is a segment my nephew Jackson lovingly coined. After knowing me for so many years, he realized that after every time I said to him, hey, can we talk? Eventually, he learned to start asking me, well, is this a Libby's problem or is this a real world problem? Because, truth be told, I do tend to get a little too excited about things most people probably barely even notice. And I have plenty of thoughts on quite a few ranging topics right now. Still not over the all women space crew, the new freedom riders, as some started calling them. Still not entirely sure what their mission was supposed to be all about. But somehow, thanks to them, my life as a woman is now apparently better. So thanks. I do have some thoughts on Pope Francis passing away. Very sad. I am not a Catholic, not on any level. So I don't get the whole hoopla over it, but I will say at the end of the day, Pope Francis was a good mensch. He was a good man. And his voice and his presence on the world stage is going to be missed by many, many people, including me. Um, as I'm recording this today, we did just get a new pope, so kind of exciting. It's an American, first time ever, so pretty cool. He's from Chicago. Love Chicago. Also, for those of you who were paying attention, if you noticed, his name is not Peter. So it looks like we dodged the whole Pope end of times prophecy thing. So good news there. And if you're sitting there going, what is she talking about? If you have no idea what I'm talking about, don't worry. I'm going to stick a pin in it for now. And I promise to come back to that one in another episode. So lots to unpack in due time, including a few updates on my favorite Korean boys, my loves, BTS. Um, I did snag some tickets to see J Hope in Chicago back in March. Took a whole train ride and everything to get there. Took 7 hours, but we made it. And it was amazing. I brought my nephew and we had the best time. By the time this episode airs, Jin will be gearing up for his solo tour in North America, starting in late June, I believe. Now, I don't have tickets for it yet. Still looking around, seeing where prices come down. And if I've timed this right, when this episode airs, the rest of my BTS boys will be just mere days away from finishing their military service. There is a big rumor mill going on right now hinting that JK himself will be launching a solo tour probably around October of this year. So, very exciting things on the horizon that are coming that will continue to keep me in my happy place. So, I'm very excited for that. And that's kind of all I have for right now in terms of some LPs. I promise to spend some time diving into all of those topics a little bit more. But today, for time, I'm going to go ahead and pivot. But real quick, before I do, I want to lay out kind of what you can expect from me during this new season of my podcast. We're going to spend time talking about what it looks like to physically release our anger, because yes, that is a thing. We're going to explore how we can rewrite old narratives, break cycles, the ones that keep us stuck on repeat. There'll be episodes on manifesting and goal setting, not just the cutesy kind, but the kind that actually helps us move forward and get what we want. And we'll spend some time exploring ways we can still find joy, even in the middle of all this chaos. These are the tools, mind shifts, the tips and tricks and stories that help me step into a version of myself I am really proud of. And I'm excited and can't wait to share them with you. If you have any questions, thoughts, opinions, or ideas on either what I'm saying or what I should talk about next, I would love, love, love to hear from you. So please send me a message over on Instagram at Libby's Audio Journal. Thank you to those who have been writing. It's kind of cool, very exciting to read your positive words and encouragement. So thank you for all of that. And that's it for LPs. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right. So as always, I have my iced coffee in hand. Lulu Joy is at daycare today, so no background opinions from the peanut gallery. And if you're ready, let's go. For today's topic, I thought I would begin this new season by sharing my personal story of how I found my way to living spiritually. It's a story broken into 3 parts: my roots, my fall, and my return. For me, the word spirituality is defined as my direct link to God and to the universe. Remember, I've always said, to me, they are the same thing, one and the same. But even more than the connection itself, it's the awareness that came with it. An awareness that calls me to live with authenticity, alignment, and empathy. If I can master these life lessons, then I trust that the people and places that are meant for me will be there. They will show up. Living spiritually also means living in harmony with karma, the balance that reminds me that everything I do carries weight and eventually will not only return just to me, but will return to all of us. Now, I didn't set out one day to live a spiritual life. Truthfully, I didn't. It found me in the rubble, in the aftermath of something that nearly broke me. And no, it didn't hand me joy or peace on a silver platter overnight simply by accepting this life. What it gave me, though, were tools. Real, grounded, sometimes ancient feeling tools. Spirituality for me became this quiet guide that helped me climb out of the dark. These tools, these teachings helped me to rebuild my life. So if you've ever wondered how I got here, how I started healing, how I started feeling whole again, this is the story I've never fully told until now. So first, to really understand how I got here, I need to take you back to my beginning. I'm very proud of my family roots. Both of my parents' lineage comes from the Jewish faith. I love my ancestry. I am proud of where I come from. But that was only the beginning of the story I was born into. For reasons I am not willing to get into today, my mom chose to have us kids baptized into the Christian faith when I was very young, maybe 3, 4 years old. From that moment on, I straddled two very similar religions, right? Can't have one without the other, but also very different in many ways. And by the time I reached adulthood, I would often joke about my two religions and say that, well, at the end of the day, as long as I follow the 10 Commandments and I put good out, then I have to make it in heaven, right? I mean, remove religion and the 10 Commandments are just solid basic rules to being a good human being, right? Now, at some point though, like so many of us, I too started to have questions. I questioned if God even existed. We are all human, and I'm willing to bet every single one of us at some point in our life has questioned this very thing. We're human. I think that's okay. So my childhood was a little confusing at times. On one side, I was legit being told that some family members would burn in hell for not accepting Jesus. While on the other side of that coin, I was being told that I would be the one burning in hell because I was following a false prophet. Very complicated theologies, right? It's no wonder I started questioning everything. I was born into a Jewish family. I didn't choose it. It was the story I was handed at birth, like we all are. Every person is born into a specific race, culture, country, and religion. So if we are all born into our quote unquote lot in life, then how can one way of living be right and another way of living be wrong? Growing up is wild because at some point we start thinking for ourselves. And when I did that, I started questioning everything I had been taught to believe. And honestly, again, how can questioning our own existence, our own understanding of faith be wrong? Isn't that what it means to be human, right? Yes, when I think about it, all faiths have their documentation and their doctrine. But if we really think about it, even the Bible was written years after Jesus died. Before that, all of his teachings were passed through spoken word. And anyone who has ever played the telephone game as a kid knows how that usually turns out. There are also countless versions of the Bible. Words have been changed, adapted, and edited over time to fit different publishers and groups of people's perspectives. And just to be clear, this isn't me bashing the Bible. I'm a true believer. But this is what I have come to understand based on the information that is available to all of us. As always, I am open to learning more, but this is where I have landed so far. These are the kinds of questions I wrestled with from childhood throughout my 20s. By my 30s, I had this little epiphany. I thought, well, if Jesus was born to a Jewish mom, raised in Jewish tradition, and the Last Supper was really just a Passover Seder, then wouldn't he still be celebrating the Seder in heaven right now? That's when I realized, for me, my two worlds didn't need to fight each other. They could coexist together. So from that moment on, for me, speaking for me, celebrating Jesus without embracing his Jewish roots felt off. And if you disagree with me, that's okay. You do you. So I had made peace with my beliefs and was living my life. And then life did what life does. It kept unfolding. By the time the clock struck midnight on the new year, stepping into 2023, I was already carrying plenty of battle scars throughout this life. Me Too moments I rarely talk about, childhood PTSD, and the raw, lingering grief of losing my brother Matt. I was also quietly mourning the version of a life I thought I'd be living by now. You've heard me say this before, if you've been with me from the beginning. I was still renting, still single, never married, and would likely never experience motherhood to a human child, that is. But up until that point, I had done some really hard work on myself. And in many ways, I felt I had made peace with most, if not all of it. I was navigating my life, if I'm allowed to say so, masterfully. I truly believed I had finally found my path, and I had finally found my people, the ones who would walk with me into whatever came next. And in 2023, for the first time in a long time, I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. Through it all, I was feeling something real, genuine happiness. I want to repeat that because I think it's important to understand before we move on. By early 2023, I had already done some really hard work on myself. I had faced many of my pains, felt I had made peace with my past, and for the first time ever, I was feeling genuinely happy. But in the blink of an eye, by the end of that same year, my entire world turned upside down. Like I said a few moments ago, my life kept unfolding, and eventually actions were taken, choices were made by me, by others, people moved, doors opened, and doors closed. And all of that led me to one of the darkest chapters of my life. What I experienced in late 2023 didn't just break my heart, it broke my soul. I wasn't okay. And I didn't know how to snap out of it either or ask for help. For those of you who've been on this journey with me since day one, you've heard me say my therapist, Amy, my usual go to, was on maternity leave. And I just didn't have the strength to talk to anyone else about what I was really going through below the surface. I was too ashamed to say the words out loud, too afraid to admit just how dark and scary my thoughts had become. So I sat alone in my apartment and cried until there were no more tears left to shed. I was in a really dark place, one I wouldn't wish on anyone. Even saying I was in a dark place doesn't even do it justice. I was literally dancing with the devil, friends. I mean that in every way. But then, by the grace of God, out of nowhere, I heard my voice. My voice was shouting at me, no, I don't want to go any further down this path. That moment of clarity changed everything for me. And I will be forever thankful, grateful, and blessed for it. That momentary lapse helped me reclaim who I was. It helped me reclaim my story. It helped me reclaim my truth. They say every villain has an origin story. Well, this is kind of mine. Now, don't get it twisted. I'm not saying I became some actual villain out here bringing doom and gloom into people's lives. Definitely not what I'm saying. But I'm not trying to cast myself as the hero either. I am a woman who simply hit her limit and found the strength not to break. Instead of allowing the events that transpired to turn me bitter or vengeful, instead, I took a different route. I looked inward. I focused on me, my part, my words, my actions, because that was the only part I truly had any control over, right? I also found a new way to pray. And I met teachers and coaches and guides along the way who helped me find peace through reciting prayers along with affirmations and these things called manifestations and saying these prayers out loud every day and sometimes multiple times a day became part of my healing journey. This practice helped me to physically shift my focus away from all the pain and negativity I had been clinging to. And I was now learning how to redirect my energy toward hope, toward possibility, toward love, toward everything and anything that was still in front of me. Now, anyone who knows me knows that I am not a nature girl, never have been. But there I was, now keenly aware of each new moon that passed. I had never paid much of any attention to the cycles of the moon before, but here I was, learning how to align my prayers with the energy of a new moon, how to use that moment to speak my intentions clearly, learning how to ask for what I wanted and to let go of what I didn't. I know this might sound a little woo-woo for some of you, and that's okay. But in those early days of my healing journey, like you've heard me say, I was willing to try anything. Each time a new moon came and went, I found myself making time to sit on the park bench near my house, to pray quietly, and to take in the sights around me, whispering prayers into the night air, something I had never ever done before. And I wasn't praying to the sky or the stars. I was praying directly to God, out there, surrounded by suburbia's version of nature, because now it felt like I had this direct link to Him. Each time I prayed, each time I spoke a manifestation out loud, I wasn't asking for healing. That's important. I wasn't asking for healing. I was envisioning myself already healed. I was picturing peace, calling it in like it was already on its way. I wasn't pleading. I was quietly reclaiming my power, my strength, my truth. But I wasn't just praying for myself. I was also sending prayers out for everyone. I wanted everyone to find peace because that's just how I roll. Lighting a scented candle had always been part of my evening routine. I just like my apartment to smell nice. It was something I did almost every day without ever really thinking about it. But now I was beginning to understand how to bring intention into even the most simplest and smallest of acts. Whether I was sitting on the floor for a few minutes with Lulu Joy, with my eyes closed and focusing on my breathing in and out, or saying prayers under the moonlight, or adding a dash of cinnamon to my coffee to welcome in abundance, or using my morning showers as a conduit to reshape my thoughts from negative to positive by repeating quietly, good things will happen to me today. All of these small things were now becoming so much more meaningful, and lighting my scented candles, that simple act became another reminder to pause, to pray, to reflect, to focus on the version of me that I wanted to become. And somewhere in the middle of all that, between the prayers, the manifesting under full moons, praying while lighting candles, the cinnamon, all of the tears, I began to feel something I hadn't felt in months. Calm. It didn't come all at once, but slowly, gently, through these daily rituals that help me shift out of negativity and back to feeling like myself again. And once I reached that stillness, I felt ready to sit with some tough questions. And I realized there was one I couldn't avoid anymore, the same one I'd been circling for months. How the heck did I end up here? So I started looking, really looking. I went back to the beginning, not just to the events that brought me to my breaking point, but everything that came before it. I looked at it all with fresh eyes. I opened every filing cabinet, every mental filing cabinet, and examined every piece of evidence throughout my entire life. I started taking accountability for my life, my choices, my actions, and my reactions. Regardless of whether anyone else will ever do me the same favor, I did it. I acknowledged and accepted my part in every story I had ever played in. I took responsibility for what I could control, my own shortcomings. But I also looked at the roles other people had played. And I forced myself, which wasn't easy, to really try to understand where they might have been coming from at that time and why they were doing what they were doing, even if I still couldn't agree with it. I examined my whole life, quietly, privately. I didn't reach out to anyone with old grievances because that wasn't the point. This wasn't about stirring up more drama. My focus was on looking at my life, my choices, my actions, to really see them and to understand why I did the things I did. This was for me, for my healing. And in doing that, in taking accountability and admitting where I could have acted or reacted differently through prayer, through manifestations, intention setting, and this radical honesty, I finally connected the dots. I saw my own patterns, my habits, and I made the decision to finally break the cycles I had been repeating for most of my life. But seeing them wasn't enough. I was finally I was finally ready to learn these lessons, to understand why they kept repeating. Have you ever noticed certain things in your life keep showing up? Arguments, disagreements, fights. You struggle holding on to people in your life, struggle holding on to jobs. These are patterns, these are cycles. There's things that we are doing that put them in motion. To understand why my cycles kept repeating, I had to look at it, right? To understand why they kept repeating, why I always acted the way I did, why I always reacted the way I did. And in turn, I tried to understand why others were doing what they were doing. All of it. Now that the patterns were laid out in front of me, I didn't just study them, I started to understand them. And in doing so, that's how I got my voice back, my power, my truth. That shift wasn't about blame. It wasn't about perfection. It was about finally choosing myself, not in a selfish way, but in a clear one. And in tracing the threads of my own history and really looking at why I did the things I did and why the people in my life did the things they did, I saw it. I decoded the underlying theme that had been connecting all of these cycles. You ready? Here it is. I'm human. I'm flawed. But guess what? So are you. And reclaiming this truth, right? This aha truth without apology and without shame is what ultimately pulled me out of the dark. Now, for some of you listening, you might be wondering, did I really need to go on that whole journey just to end up realizing I'm human and flawed and so is everyone around me? Yeah, I did. Because if I hadn't, I would have kept repeating the same habits and patterns over and over and over again. Would I have preferred not having to walk through hell to get there? Yeah, of course. Who wouldn't? But living spiritually made me understand that this was part of my journey. The people, places, and things needed to go away. I needed to walk alone through the fire so that I could understand and start learning. I needed to understand that this was part of my journey. And it's what ultimately helped me learn what I needed to learn. I had found a way to mold my Christian faith, my Jewish roots, and this new spiritual path into something that felt grounding, something that felt real. It brought me closer to God and closer to myself. Spirituality has given me the space to fully examine who I am, to accept my flaws and accept the flaws in others. And by the time I came out of the darkness, I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving again. I was smiling again. I was happy again. And I realized that I was now living the version of myself I had been manifesting so many months ago. But my journey wasn't over yet. What came next wasn't about rebuilding my life. It was about rediscovering myself, about remembering who I'd always been beneath all of the pain. Now, I don't want to speak for anyone else on a spiritual path, and I'm not trying to generalize it either. But for me, stepping out of all that darkness, it did change me. I'm still me, still kind, still deeply empathetic. I'll still show up for you, cheer you on, cook you food, help you rebuild your life if that's what you need. That part of me hasn't changed. It's written into my DNA. But I am different now. Stronger, wiser, quieter, clear-minded. When I first started working through everything, it felt like I was wrapped in a layer of numbness from head to toe, like my whole system had gone quiet. I figured maybe my nervous system just needed a little break because, let's be real, it had been through a lot. But over time, I realized it wasn't numbness. And I am aware this might sound strange, but that dull, foggy feeling, it wasn't emptiness either. It was a kind of protection. A protection that like I grew, like a reward I received not from God or the universe, but one I earned for myself from doing all of the hard work, from not turning away, from finally breaking the patterns and cycles I had been carrying for so many years. I started noticing that when familiar triggers started popping up again, I wasn't getting thrown like I used to. I could stay grounded, even when something or someone was trying to hit a nerve and pull me back into my old cycles. If this helps, think of it this way. If you're a Marvel fan, you'll appreciate this. It kind of felt like I now had my own emotional Jarvis system, like a personal inner computer in my brain and in my heart, quietly running diagnostics in the background, helping me to respond instead of react, helping me to stay steady. I can dial it up when the world around me feels too loud and keep myself protected. And I can dial it down when I'm ready to handle all of the feels. It gave me choice, room to breathe. I'm still me, still soft, still showing up for people, just with better armor. So, what did I actually learn while climbing out of hell? What locked me onto this spiritual path? First and foremost, the biggest lesson I learned is that life isn't actually that complicated. And I used to think it was. I used to think it was some impossible algorithm, and I wasn't smart enough to decode it. I used to get so overwhelmed, so frustrated, convinced I was just a victim of everything that was happening around me. But somewhere along the way in my healing process, while I was sorting through my pain and replaying all of the patterns, I began to see things more clearly. I realized something. It's not that life is complicated. It's that we forget. We have always had the greatest gift of all, choice. We get to choose what kind of energy we bring into the world. And that choice, the energy we cast out, is one of the most powerful things we will ever control, friends. We get to choose whether we lead with compassion, understanding, and accountability. We get to choose how we show up for ourselves, for others, for our healing, and even for our own humanity. And when we find ourselves in situations that feel unsettling or uncomfortable, how we choose to respond is a direct reflection of who we are. We have the choice to pause, to pull back, to ask questions. We have the choice to release our anger, to make space for understanding, to see all sides and take accountability where it is ours. And when we start moving through life with a clear conscience and we focus on putting good out into the world, friends, what is meant for us will find us. The people, the places, the opportunities. What's meant for us doesn't need to be forced. When our energy and our actions are aligned, they find a way in. Now, accepting this truth wasn't easy. Not going to lie, wasn't easy to accept this. And I know it might not be everyone's cup of tea out there, and that's okay. But for me, this was the moment everything cracked open. I realized I had a choice. I could either stay stuck in blame, keep telling the same stories and keep repeating the same patterns, or I could take ownership of the pieces. I could take ownership of the pieces I didn't like, and I could change them. I could hold myself accountable for the role I played, and I could begin to move forward in the light. Not just some big breakthrough, but the kind of light you carry when you're no longer hiding from yourself, when you've taken the sting out of the story, when there's nothing left anyone can throw at you because you've already faced it all with honesty. That was my first real lesson on the path to spirituality. Not just something I needed to understand, but something I needed to feel, something I needed to admit and to accept. The biggest shift I had, the one that changed everything for me, was realizing that I have the power to choose the energy I put into this world. And so does everyone else. That may sound simple, but for me, it was revolutionary. Because when I really understood that, I stopped seeing myself as a victim of other people's choices. I started to understand that while I can't control what anyone else does, I can absolutely control what I carry, how I respond, and what I release. And here's the thing. Most, not all, but most hurtful behavior isn't always coming from a place of cruelty. It's coming from people who are still stuck in their own cycles. I'm going to say that again. Most, not all, but most hurtful behavior isn't always coming from a place of cruelty. It's coming from people who are still stuck in their own cycles. Sometimes it's fear. Sometimes it's unhealed pain. Sometimes it's a habit. But whatever it is still a choice. And when I saw that clearly, I stopped making their choices about me. That shift changed everything. My boundaries, my expectations, my conversations. I stopped absorbing other people's behavior as my responsibility. I stopped waiting for apologies. I learned how to forgive, not just others, but myself for being human. That's when I began reclaiming my peace, my joy, not through magic, but through grace, accountability, and choosing to stay rooted in who I am. And while it might sound like a new age realization, for me, this truth echoes everything I have ever been taught through Judaism, Christianity, and my own spiritual path. It's not a break from my faith. It's the embodiment of it. The reminder that we reap what we sow. What we plant grows. That love, humility, compassion, and discernment are choices we make every day. And those choices matter. I'm going to say that again. Living spiritually became a reminder that we all reap what we sow. What we plant grows. That love, humility, compassion, and discernment are choices we make every day. And those choices matter because that's the energy we carry forward. That's it. That's my story. That's how I found myself on the path to spirituality. Like I said in the beginning, I didn't set out one day to live a spiritual life. Truthfully, I didn't. It found me in the rubble, in the aftermath of something that nearly broke me, and it helped me heal. Not just the wounds I was carrying in that moment, but the ones I had been holding for decades. It gave me the space and the tools to finally start learning and breaking these cycles, the ones I didn't even know I had been repeating. For me, living spiritually didn't mean abandoning my faith. It actually deepened it. I found new ways to pray that helped me feel a deeper connection to God, to the universe, to myself. What I've come to understand is that living a spiritual life isn't about checking off a to-do list. It's about embodying a way of being. You can't just show up, say you're spiritual, and get a participation medal. Living spiritually isn't passive. Yes, burning the sage, sprinkling the cinnamon in, it's all light and fun, but it only gets you so far. Living spiritually is much deeper than that. It demands you to do the gritty, unglamorous work of being radically honest with yourself. To ask, am I putting out good energy? Are my actions aligned with who I am or with who I want to be? Am I growing or am I stalled? On the other side of all that hard work is this word called alignment, the kind that allows us to meet the people, places, and things that are truly meant for us. And we can't outsource that step. We have to do the work. We have to become aware of our habits, our actions, our reactions, and our cycles. We have to be willing to admit them, accept them, and hold ourselves accountable so that we can also move forward changed, stronger, wiser. Okay, I think I've babbled on long enough. Apologies, this one was a long one, but thank you for walking on this journey with me. As always, we will add to this next week. Remember, what we water grows. So let it be joy. Let it be truth. Peace out, friends.